Hi everyone, this is Alan Marsh, presenting Discovering Buddhism, a course that is presented by Vajrayana Institute, and I've got the privilege of being able to teach this course. And tonight we're starting a new module, which is called Refuge in the Three Jewels. It's all about taking refuge, what refuge means. So before we start, just for new people, I've got my name in the chat column there and my email address. So if anyone's watching and they haven't watched before and you'd like to join the group, then just send me an email and I'll put you on the mailing list and you'll be able to receive the notes, which very much help understand the content of the course. So it's actually a course which covers 12 different subjects. It's an overview, a middle level overview of the whole of the Buddha's teachings. And 12 modules, each one's about a month, about 4 weeks, taught once a week for 4 weeks. And so it takes just over a year to get through all the topics. And we're actually at Module 5, I think this is, Module 5. So we're almost halfway. So as always, we start with a 5-minute mindfulness meditation, which helps calm us down and gets us, the mind, receptive to be able to study the Dharma. Incredible privilege we have to study the Dharma. And do some meditation as well. So get comfortable with the mindfulness practice. It's just watching the breath coming and going, and we can be sitting or lying down. The main thing is that the spine is straight and the body is comfortable. If the body's relaxed, it helps relax the mind. And I'll guide the highlights, Lisa. Good to see you there. So basically, it's just basically helps the mind calm, settle, by giving it this very simple task of watching the breath. And it's so simple that the mind gets bored very quickly, and inevitably it will wander off to some other distracting thought. So while we're watching the breath, part of the mind is keeping it like a guarding, like just checking where we are. That's called introspection, alertness, and just checking that we are still on the breath. And if we notice that we've wandered, thinking about a different time, different place, we just gently let go of that thought and come back to the breath. Hi Stacey, good to see you there. Okay, so let's just get comfortable and we'll do our 5 minutes mindfulness practice. Okay, we just begin by consciously coming into our inner world, just letting go of the day we've just had. Time to focus on what's happening in our inner life, the mind. A moment to appreciate the incredible opportunity we have to study these incredible teachings of the Buddha, that we've discovered them. And this is such an opportunity, so rare. Our practice is motivated not just for our own benefit, but to help those around us, and ultimately our practice is to become an enlightened being so that we can be of maximum benefit to other beings. The Mahayana motivation. Now we just come into our body, just make sure Body's comfortable, spine straight, shoulders relaxed. Evenly balanced on the floor or the chair. Eyes could be closed or just gazing ahead gently. And at the beginning, just consciously focus on the out breath and have a sense of breathing out all tension of the day, any tightness in the body, or the discursive thoughts, busy mind. Time to let that go. And now just focusing on the simple rhythm of the breath as it enters and leaves the body. Nothing to change, nothing to judge. Just watching the breath. The breath we can focus on at the nostrils. We can focus at the abdomen, rising and falling. Or we can just watch the whole movement of the body with each breath. It's the most comfortable place to focus on the breath. Staying with the breath, the full flow of the in-breath, full flow of the out-breath. Every now and again, just checking where our mind is, looking to whether we're being distracted or not. And we notice we've wandered off the breath. Be glad we notice. That's what the meditation is. And then gently let go of that distraction. Patiently come back to the breath. Just relax. Okay, just looking at the handouts, I think that I sent out yesterday. You should have the course readings. And then there's the transcript by a very senior monk called Venerable Dondrup. He's the main teacher at Buddha House in Adelaide. He's one of the most senior monks in the FPMT organisation. FPMT is the organisation that runs Vajrayana Institute and has centres all around the world. And FPMT Education Department actually creates this course, Discovering Buddhism, and collects all the readings and reading lists, and, the transcripts and so on. So yes, it's the Dondrup's teachings are good. I think he's taught the subject over 6 weeks, whereas we're just doing it over 4 weeks. So there will be quite a bit more detail in his teachings. As there's also the meditations are included in that we'll do. We might not follow the exact sequence that's in the transcript. And the other one you should have is just the notes that are for today's class. And there's actually a thing called a course outline that just has 4 weeks, just a brief topic summary of the course, of what we cover each week. So just looking at the reading list again, practicing the path. So apart from those materials that you've actually been sent, digital copies, you'll notice there's a book called Following in the Buddha's Footsteps by His Holiness the Dalai Lama. HHDL is His Holiness the Dalai Lama, and Thupten Chodron. So these are a series of books called The Library of Wisdom and Compassion that are all the teachings that the Dalai Lama has given to Westerners on the Lam Rim, on the basic Buddhist teaching. So they're very good to have. You don't have to buy them if you don't want to, but they actually are much higher, quite a bit higher level than Discovering Buddhism. But because they're specifically taught for Westerners, they're very, very readable. So I've used some quotes from that book in the notes. The other one, which is more condensed, more basic, Practicing the Path by Yangtze Rinpoche. That's kind of a good textbook for the whole course, because that's the whole of the Lam Rim, all the topics that we cover in Discovering Buddhism, taught by Yangtze Rinpoche, Tibetan monk who's lived in America for many years, and he's teaching at one of those American FPMT centers. So it's a collection of his teachings on the Lam Rim topics. That's a great book. Liberation in the Palm of Your Hand is by Pabonka Rinpoche, a very classic text. So that's text that of Pabonka was a very famous monk in Tibet before Tibet was taken over by the Chinese. So it was sort of in the beginning of the 20th century. He was teaching, very, very high teacher. And so he was teaching in a monastic center. Liberation in the Palm of Your Hand is the Lam Rim, taught by Pabonka Rinpoche to monks in Tibet and translated, of course. There's a couple of other books. These were added by Wai Chong when he taught the course. Wai Chong's our resident teacher, or Western teacher at the Vajrayana Institute. And I haven't actually read those books, but they look interesting. I actually looked to see whether you could buy Faith. Sharon Salzberg's a very famous teacher. And so that book called Faith is available in digital copy, but I don't think it's available in hard copy. Then there's a book by Thich Nhat Hanh very famous Vietnamese monk who passed away just last week, I think it was, or the week before, and taught Westerners and taught particularly in France, and published many books that are very easy to read. The last one, Buddha by Karen Armstrong, I haven't managed to find that one. Anyway, there's plenty to read, and don't feel that you need to sort of read everything that's sent out. I know it can be a bit overwhelming. With the actual readings for this course, you can see that there's the one that's called Essential, what's it called? Essential Readings, I think it's called. There's 4 articles, one by His Holiness the Dalai Lama, Seeking an Inner Refuge, one called Teaching on Refuge by Lama Yeshe, Essential Buddhist Practice by Lama Zopa, and Refuge by Lama Yeshe. So the ones by Lama Yeshe and the Dalai Lama are very easy and short. The article by Lama Zopa is extensive, and I would sort of not read that first if you're looking for an easy start for the readings. It's very good. It actually covers virtually everything in the Lam Rim, everything that we've actually covered in this course in one very intensive teaching by Lama Zopa Rinpoche. So even though it might be quite advanced, sometimes in Buddhist teachings, the teachers say, even if you don't understand what you're hearing or even reading, if they're from great teachers, from great masters, it puts an imprint on the mind, like it puts some very positive imprint on the mind. So we may not intellectually understand all the words, but they often use that expression, a good imprint on the mind, which means that if we come back later, when we've done more study, more meditation, those imprints can bear fruit, and even the imprints that we put in on our mind in this life might bear fruit in later lives. So that's often a expression that's used by teachers. Even if you don't understand, it puts an imprint on the mind, and later on those imprints will help us understand. Okay, let's just have a look at the particular topics. So just the topic of refuge, very interesting. It's we've only just finished, remember we've done karma, where we've looked at the teachings on cause and effect. Karma is really about cause and effect. And so those details we looked at in the karma teachings help us understand our situation, that all our actions of body, speech and mind have an effect on the mind, they put imprints on the mind, and they're basically driven, because we're not enlightened beings, by previous karmic actions and delusions. Karma and delusions, the driving force for most of what we do and think. So those imprints have been laid down for many years, or many lifetimes, infinite lifetimes, karma and delusions. So we're driven by non-enlightened impulses. Basically, karma and delusions means the delusions are that we're holding on to a view of reality that doesn't exist, particularly holding on to a view that ourself, we are this very concrete self that has to be looked after, and that is virtually the center of the universe. And this very strong instinct of putting the self in the center is very basic delusion that we're taught is driving all the other delusions, which is self-centeredness, miserliness, all those non-virtues that we looked at in previous courses. So this karmic collection that we accumulate, when we study that topic, we realize that there's actually work to be done. We looked at the purifying topic last week. We can actually purify karma, but what's the actual karma shows us that we need to go to the doctor. We have problems. It helps us to realize that what Rabina calls, we have this mental sickness, and we all have mental illness, but not in the traditional clinical Western sense, but we're driven by karma and delusions. And so this realization comes help when we study teachings on karma. What do we do? What do we do to help alleviate the suffering from this illness? And taking refuge in the three jewels is the first step. So refuge is really about where our mind seeks comfort, where the driving force behind what we do is refuge. So it's an unusual concept. We're not sort of talking about the usual mundane meaning of refuge that we use, particularly for refugees who are seeking a safe place. That is, we're also seeking that, but not in the physical sense. But it's a much wider meaning of that. Let's look at what Lama Yeshe says. He says, when we take refuge in Buddha Dharma refers to actually the Buddha and the teachings. The important point is that we've recognized our own profound potential. Okay, so we have recognized our own profound potential. So Lama Yeshe is saying that refuge is ultimately seeing that we have the Buddha potential within us and working to reveal that, working to build that potential into reality, practicing the power. So this idea of that's the profound meaning of refuge, what's often called inner refuge, taking refuge in our own resources. And that's a big step. We're going to do a meditation later on purifying our view of ourselves and while accepting our faults. So this goes with this, what Lama Yeshe is telling us, that we have usually quite a low opinion of our potential, and it's a big obstacle to following the path to enlightenment, the Mahayanic path. Excuse me. So that's why Lama Yeshe starts with this idea of accepting our inner assets, that we actually have this incredible potential within us, and then using the teachings to develop and nurture that. So the outer side, the traditional view of refuge is Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. And we say a prayer usually before just about every teaching. I take refuge in Buddha, Dharma, Sangha. By the virtue of practicing generosity and other perfections, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. It's a very standard introductory prayer before teachings. So taking refuge in Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, and by virtue of practicing giving and other perfections. So in order to become an enlightened being, we practice the path, and giving and those perfections are the Mahayana 6 perfections, which is actually a path to enlightenment, the Mahayana path to enlightenment. They become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. So we're turning ourselves to this infallible cure for our delusions, karmas, and our situation that up to now has not actually enlightened us. So just looking a bit more closely at what the profound meaning of Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha are, This is what Lama Yeshe's referring to in the quotes that I put in the notes. Buddha is the totally open mind, the state beyond confusion. So that's when refers to our mind becoming totally open as we progress along the path towards Buddhahood. Dharma is the path of wisdom leading to that state. So to become enlightened being, have that open, totally open mind, omniscient mind it is, we need to practice wisdom. Though this is the teachings. We become wise by practicing the teaching. And Sangha are those who are the teachers, who are going to reveal the path. And it can also refer to Sangha. It can be referred to the great masters, the teachers, the Buddha himself, his teaching, great teachers like His Holiness the Dalai Lama, Lama Zopa, Lama Yeshe, and so on. But it also can refer to our fellow travellers who are also studying the Dharma and how important they are to help us on our journey to Buddhahood. Lama Yeshe talks quite a bit in one of his extracts in the readings about how influenced we are by those around us. And so he says that it's very easy when you go to India, as a lot of the early students went to India to get the teachings. This is before we had centres set up. We're talking about the 70s, late 60s, early 70s. And there was really no opportunity to study Buddhism in any depth in the West. So most people, including myself, went to India, particularly Nepal, to get teachings. We didn't quite know what we're looking for, but we're lucky. The lucky ones met great teachers such as Lama Yeshe and Lama Zopa and the Dalai Lama. So those teachings were you're in a terrific, there's a course called the Kopan course in Kathmandu, which is where Lama Zopa lives at the moment. And every year they have a course, about a month-long course. They've been holding that since the 70s. And so it's very intense when you're in a retreat. Your mind is just awash with Dharma, okay, day and night. And so it becomes quite easy to absorb the teachings in this atmosphere. Everybody else is there doing the same thing. You have fellow like-minded students. And so in that environment, there's also this wonderful sort of sense of being in a holy place. There's just a lot of great stupas there, a lot of blessed monasteries, teachers, monks, and so on. It's the same in India. Very much there's a very spiritual sort of atmosphere. And so when you come back after that, you come back to what's a very sort of sterile society back in Australia or America or the West. There's this sense of not, it's so, Lama Yeshe says, you just go back to your old friends and you're in this very non-dharmic atmosphere where it's all sensory perceptions, dancing, getting the best job and the competitive consumer society and so on. So he says that's why centres are set up, were set up, and are still being set up in the West. So people have a place, which Lama Zopa says it's like an emergency hospital, a centre, where people can get away from this sort of very competitive, materialistic society, which is what the West is driven by, consumerism, materialistic values and so on. And there's this like little place, like a refuge, where you have teachers, teachings, teaching the Buddha's teachings, the Buddha, Dharma and Sangha is there. It's a physical refuge and has also the resources of an inner refuge. So that's, sorry to sidetrack, I was just talking about the Sangha, the importance of the Sangha. So centres, particularly for Westerners, are important for the the ordained people. We've got a Geshe in our centre who's extremely highly qualified. Geshe, and we have Venerable Daki, fully ordained nun, who very senior, and we also have Wai Chong, who was ordained for many years, and now he's a lay teacher. So this is kind of the Sangha refuge, where we can, and of course during the pandemic we've had to modify that physical place to go and meet, and luckily we've got the resources of YouTube, internet, NBN, and so on, so we can actually meet in a virtual situation. So you see that the note's talking quite a bit about the idea of false refuge. So false refuge is really basically what, before we meet Buddhism and see that there's something there that is worthwhile, what has been driving us before that. So it's just another word, this idea of the 8 worldly dharmas, just a fancy term for what has been driving us up until this point in this particular life, and what has been driving us in previous lives. Just quick, we've actually looked at this topic in past units, past modules. So if we just look at them, it's basically 4 things that we want and don't want. So wanting gain and avoiding loss. Wanting gain and avoiding loss is the first 2 worldly dharmas. So if you think about this, wanting physical things like clothes, cars, houses, not just enough to provide us with the necessaries, but also being caught up in the idea of consumerism, where we have to keep updating, getting the latest phone, and we have this idea of competing and being having the latest and competing with our neighbours and so on. So it's more than just getting the basics and being comfortable, which we've all got in the West, but this idea that it's never quite enough. We need to have a better job, a better house, and so on, and not wanting the opposite. So trying to avoid the idea of being without, and so there's this thing that we always need to do better. But this is the idea of just always improving. So basically, so that's the physical thing. Just quickly going through the 4, the other worldly dharma. So that's wanting the physical things more than we want, more than we need, and then wanting the actual sensory pleasures. So good taste, sounds, friends, sights, holidays, wanting only good experiences. And we can look back at how successful we've been in satisfying fully and completely this drive for pleasant experiences and avoiding unpleasant experiences. And you can see that there's always this sense of dissatisfaction. So that's what the Sanskrit word called dukkha, which is usually translated as suffering, but some teachers say that it's actually much more accurate to translate as dissatisfaction. The idea that looking outwards for external things to satisfy, external physical things, material goods, money, external sensory things, senses, it will never provide lasting satisfaction. Wanting praise, avoiding criticism. So this is the idea of our ego. We need to have people saying kind words to it, and we don't like to be criticized. And also good reputation is sort of linked to that as well, wanting good reputation and not wanting shame. So sometimes when you read these sort of lists, it feels, oh, well, I'm not like that. I'm not driving Lamborghinis, and I'm not into a really expensive lifestyle. But things like wanting approval and this idea of um, rejecting any kind of criticism. My favourite example is when I was on the committee that runs the block of flats that I'm living in. There's a rumour, I don't know what started it, that somehow I'd been spending money without approval of the committee. It's completely wrong. And I was sitting in the meeting and somebody said this, and I could just feel my ego rising, and me, I just, how dare they say that? So this is said to be extremely good for our practice when we have criticism, unjustified criticism. We can just then realise that there is this worldly dharma there in the mind that we don't want criticism, and there is this ego that wants to be massaged and approved of, and so on. So anyway, it was good, really good practice. And so, of course, I felt as though I had to clear my name. I could just show that luckily I had emails and things to do that. But it was, for me, incredibly, I thought, I don't really have this thing of pride. I'm a fairly modest sort of person. But it was this thing of how dare, I was carrying it around for weeks, actually. And it was quite a long time ago. But I still think about it and think, that was just such a terrible thing for that person to say. But we're taught, Lama Zopa, Lama Yeshe, and all the teachings, the Dalai Lama, these people or these situations where we're criticised, where we're challenged, our buttons are pressed, are far more important than when people are being nice to us. These, without the person, without the challenger, then we can't become enlightened, basically. So Lama Zopa keeps saying, this precious person, the precious enemy, or the difficult person who's criticising it, is our key to enlightenment. Because without, if you think about it, when we do this meditation quite often in our drop-in meditation, we put the enemy, the difficult one, right at the front. Without that person, we can't practice patience. Patience, which is partly defined as not being angry when we're criticised, no matter what, and or not just criticised, but could be being physically attacked and so on, but reacting with compassion and forbearance. Okay, so these worldly dharmas are what are said to be, before we meet Buddha Dharma Sangha, before we meet the Dharma, the teachings, the incredible Buddhist teaching, of what really is going on, what's driving us. And so when we see the limitations of that, we have some understanding of karma, that all, if we're driven by the eight worldly dharmas, we're sort of in this sort of karmic, it's like a vortex, something that's just like a snowball. The more we do it, the more we're in it. So it has this compounding effect. So seeing the limits of the eight world dharmas and seeing how powerful the three jewels of refuge are, Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, you can see that the Buddhist refuge is really infallible, whereas that worldly refuge is not. This is going to just lead to more problems, more suffering, more discontent. So what ultimately what the driving force is for taking refuge at one level is fear and faith. So fear and faith. So fear and faith means that we can see, if we have some basic understanding of karma, we know that everything on our mind stream, and it's basically negative imprints on our mind stream, that's what we're told. This human body that we end up with at the moment is incredibly rare. Mostly we've been in much more suffering realms, and it's just incredibly a great opportunity to have this human body where we can actually change our mind and do some practice and put positive imprints on the mind. So if we don't, there's this thing that we have to bear the consequences of our karmic actions, maybe not in this life, but in future lives. So the fear, understanding that karma is certain, remember the certainty, karma is definite, is actually expression. And so having some understanding of that, we want to avoid that happening in future, so we need to purify now, we need to create positive karmic seeds on our mind stream. So this is wholesome fear is what the Lama Yeshe calls it, and Lama Zopa, wholesome fear. It's one that will drive us towards taking refuge in something that is going to actually help, going to the right sort of doctor as we realize our illness. So seeing that we're in this cyclic existence and we need to do something to stop the momentum of it. So fear and faith. So what do? We realize that we need to take action, and we have faith. So this is why we study what these three jewels are, Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. We see that the teachings of the Buddha, that's the Dharma, and the more we look at them, is like that's the entry point to purifying and our mind stream. So the Dharma, His Holiness said, although the three jewels are usually said to be Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, he said actually the Dharma is the most important one, because that's the teachings. The teachings are the way in to becoming Buddha, and the Sangha are those that are helping us, our teachers and teaching. Dharma start with the teaching and the teachers, and then Buddhahood is what we're after, the end of all suffering. So with if you look at Dondrup's transcript is very good on this, and just give you, if you are looking, page 10, Dondrup does quite a lot of introductory teachings in that particular transcript. So page 10 is where he starts talking about the three levels of practice and taking refuge in the three-level practice. So we've covered this in other modules, but just briefly, the first level of practice is what sometimes called basic. The beings of, sometimes they thought beings of low capacity, which I'm sure definitely I am. So these are the beings who are practicing the way I just mentioned, fear and faith. We don't want adverse reactions in the future, karmic fruits in the future. So we have faith and take action, taking refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, Sangha. The second level are people who don't want just another rebirth in a good form, such as the body. They can see if they're in this cycle of rebirth, they're going to constantly be suffering. So they need to get out of that whole cycle of rebirth, which is called samsara. So these are the intermediate beings who want to be liberated totally and purify their minds to such an extent that they have complete understanding of reality, and they've got perfect concentration, shamatha, samadhi, and so they can focus on the teachings, and particularly on the idea of the wisdom realizing emptiness, how things exist, and they can become liberated. The highest level, this is the Mahayana level, where the beings see that not only do we need to be liberated, but we've got to be able to help other beings who are not liberated, not just stay in this situation of nirvana. Nirvana is where it's completely peaceful because the mind is liberated. But we have to use compassion, think about those who are not liberated, and that's the Mahayana element being introduced. So that's the being of highest capacity is practicing to benefit all sentient beings. So these different levels, they're not necessarily separate beings. It can be in our mind stream at any time. We can have different preponderance. We could have sometimes some days where we're driven by fear and faith, other days where we want to be liberated from the whole realm of samsaric existence, and then other days where it's compassion that's motivating us, the Mahayana motivation, the one that will get us to Buddhahood. So next week, this week we're just sort of basically looking at what refuge is, and so the next 3 weeks we'll be looking at what exactly Buddha is, what exactly Dharma is, and what exactly Sangha is. But just touching on the three jewels. I've just in the notes I've actually put what refuge is for the Theravadan teachings, which I don't know very much about, but that is actually the teachings that His Holiness gives in that particular book I've put in the reading list, and then comparing that to the Mahayana idea of refuge in the three jewels. So I've just sort of put that there because it's basically my Buddhist upbringing has been in the Mahayana tradition, so I really don't know much about the Theravadan tradition. So just looking briefly at the Theravadan tradition, when they talk of refuge in the Buddha, they're basically talking about the historical Buddha, who was Shakyamuni Buddha, 2,500 years ago in India, etc. So under the Theravadan tradition, Buddha was very highly, when he was born, he was almost enlightened. And then he just had, from such his practices in previous life, he sat under the Bodhi tree and became enlightened just by force of his meditation. And so he became an enlightened being, taught for the next, 40 or 50 years. And so we have those sutras. And compared to the Mahayana teachings, say that the Buddha was actually enlightened before he got born. He was actually manifesting a human who became enlightened. And so the emphasis is not so much on the historical Buddha, but the fact of Buddhahood. The Buddhahood is possible. And so there's been many Buddhas before this one. There are many Buddhas since this one. So many people have become enlightened based on studying the historical Buddha's teaching. And so when we're talking about Buddhahood, we're just talking about there's so unlimited numbers of Buddhas, past, present, and future. A much wider sort of concept. And so that's the Dharma in the Theravadan tradition is basically what Buddha taught while he is alive on earth. And basically it's the eightfold path, right paths, right intention. There's different ways of summarizing the Theravadan teachings. Ethics, concentration, and wisdom is one way. The three jewels, the three paths to enlightenment, principles of the path, and so by obtaining perfect concentration, perfect wisdom, understanding nature of reality, with that concentration, these Arya beings, they're called, become liberated from samsara. And the Sangha jewel are those people who have become liberated, the Sangha, stream enterers. Sangha can also mean the ordained community. So just the difference between the Mahayana and the Theravadan tradition is there's kind of a wider view that the Buddha is not just the conventional historical Buddha, but Buddhahood, all those Buddhas who exist now, will be Buddhas in the future. Dharma jewel covers not just teachings that are taught historically by the Buddha, but all the teachings. If you think about the commentaries on the teachings, such as Lama Tsongkhapa's commentary, and Lama Tsongkhapa is the founder of this tradition, the Gelugpa tradition, the Mahayana, the tradition that the Dalai Lama is a member of. They call that school. So these scriptures, the commentaries and what the beings who've become enlightened based on the Buddha's teaching are also very much part of the Dharma. And then the Sangha has that wider meaning that I've just mentioned before. It can be ordained people who've taken vows. It can be our own gurus and teachers, and can also be unordained people, such fellow students who are studying the Dharma and have taken, usually it would refer to people who have actually taken refuge in the sense they've committed to the Buddha's teaching. Okay, so the other useful concept is the idea of causal and resultant refuge. Causal and resultant, you'll see this comes up in the various extracts and texts and so on. Causal refuge is the things that will give us the incentive to study, meditate, practice. And so we look at Shakyamuni Buddha as an example. We look at the teachings, the actual original teachings of the Buddha, the sutras, and also the commentaries and so on. And the resultant refuge is what we become by following the practices, following the teaching. And also it can also mean taking refuge in our inner Buddha nature. So causal and resultant refuge. So to be able to develop resultant refuge, we need to actually take causal refuge. So we need to actually have heard teachings, heard teachers, come across the three jewels in different form, and then realize that these, it could be slow, it could be gradual. Taking refuge is not necessarily, very rarely is it instant for somebody just realizing, oh, that Buddhahood is actually definitely for me, and I'm going to become a Buddhist, and I'll never look anywhere else. So it can be a slow process. I actually feel as though I'm still taking refuge after 30 or 40 years of studying Buddhism, and it's still a work in progress. So it's something that, as we develop our practice, can become more meaningful. In the beginning, it might be using the words and having very little understanding of the concepts of what they mean. And then by practicing and progressing along the path, we can actually become, it can be something that's more meaningful. So we see that the infallibility of Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, the three jewels. So I think on the notes I've actually got the meditation of taking refuge in the three jewels, but I think we'll do that next week, which is, you can actually read ahead and look, so prepare for that. But the meditation tonight I want to do is called Purifying Ourselves While Accepting Our Faults. So it fits in perfectly with Lama Yeshe's emphasis on recognizing our inner Buddhahood, our inner potential, our inner Buddhahood. And so that's what we do in this. The actual meditation I got from Geshe Zopa, where he did this. Geshe Zopa is a young monk who used to be the attendant of Lama Zopa Rinpoche. He's now living in Australia, I think in Perth at the moment. And he does travel around, and very excellent teacher, speaks perfect English. He's lived in Australia for many years, and he particularly goes to centres where they don't have resident teachers. So there was many visits before the pandemic. He taught often up at the Blue Mountain Centre, where the little centre up in the Blue Mountains where they've never had a resident teacher there. So he gave this particular meditation up there. He starts with, first of all, recalling the good things that we've done in our lives. Okay, so this is he says that we do this because Westerners tend to dwell on the mistakes and the faults. So we spend a little bit of time just recalling things we've done to help those friends, enemies, friends, they could be relatives we've worked with, older people, voluntary work we've done. So things that we've done with a pure motivation. Could have been someone we've helped when we were younger, someone we're helping now. So things that have been done with an altruistic motivation and giving ourselves, showing that this shows we have the basics of compassion and kindness. Then, and we also have practiced generosity, helped others with our time and our resources. And so we focus on that. Then we actually look at our precious human form. We have done this practice before, recalling how fortunate we are to be born in this human body with a human brain. And we have landed this human body in a country which is materially quite wealthy. So we've got all the basics for keeping clothing, food, and so on. And we've also got an interest in the Dharma and developing spiritually, which is incredibly rare. So we acknowledge our extraordinarily great opportunity that we have. Then we just acknowledge that we have faults, we've made mistakes, but we see these faults as not us. They're driven by the delusions and the karma that we've been talking about. Things, mentally thinking things, being driven by mental delusions and obscurations. So these sort of false views of how things exist, how we exist, which generate selfishness and miserliness and so on, we see them as not having no basis in our Buddha nature. They're actually driven by delusions. So by tackling the delusions, we can rid ourselves of these faults. So the fault, like the cloud in the sky, doesn't affect the Buddha nature. And so we can recognize their fault and deal with them, and also see that they're dependent on causes and conditions, and we can purify and get rid of the effects of these faults that have been driving. So in the last part of the meditation, we rejoice in our situation. So this, Geshe Zopa says, this involves just thinking in a very contented way, our house just perfect. He says, whatever aspect of our life we think of, instead of thinking that something wrong with it, we need to fix it, think that this is just right. So have this attitude of contentment, where our neighbours just right for us. We can practice. We need people to practice with. We don't need to be surrounded by people who like us all the time. So every experience that happens to us becomes the cause for happiness. Everything that happens to us, our situation is just right. So this is quite a powerful practice. And so then we end by wishing ourselves well. I have this incredible potential. May I be happy, healthy, live in peace. And then we generate that out to others, because if we've made peace with ourselves, we can make peace with others and extend love and kindness to others. So it's a very good meditation to develop inner refuge, taking refuge in our Buddha nature, Buddha potential, which all the teachers and teachings say is basically the ultimate refuge, the most important sort of refuge. Okay, so just get comfortable. Maybe have a sip of water. So we'll start by doing a few moments of breath meditation to calm the mind, and then I'll lead you into the actual meditation. Okay, so we're now just coming into a quiet space of mind, focusing on the breath for a few moments. Stilling the busyness of the mind and coming into a relaxed stillness. Watching the breath. And we begin our meditation practice on purifying our view of ourselves while accepting our faults by starting calling our positive attributes, things that we've done in our life that have helped others. We can actually think about acts of kindness, compassion, our friends, our family, or to strangers. Perhaps voluntary work we've done. Acts that have been motivated by altruism to benefit others. Selfless acts. Acts of generosity. We've given our resources, our money, our time, our energy to help others. Acts of patience, forbearance. Acknowledging that we do have the seeds of compassion, loving kindness, generosity, and wisdom. This shows that we have Buddha nature. You have the seeds that can be nurtured and developed. We can take inner refuge, this potential. Then we can just contemplate how fortunate we are and what good karma we have created to have a human body, appreciating our human birth, our human form. We have not only a human body, but a human brain. We've been born in a very favourable place that is free of civil strife, wars, insurrection. Where there's freedom of religion, human rights are respected. And in particular, we have been born in a place where the Buddha's teachings exist. There are teachers, there's Dharma, there's books in languages we understand, explaining the path to enlightenment, centres and spiritual friends. And we also have interest, the inclination to follow a spiritual path, unbelievably rare. So rejoice in our good fortune of this situation, our perfect human rebirth. Stay with that thought, how rare and precious this situation is. Third point is to acknowledge that we are not enlightened beings yet. We have this human body, potential to develop our human brain and our mind. But we also have karmic imprints on our mind stream. Karma and delusions have caused imprints on our mind. And we have anger, we have impatience, we have ignorance, attachment. Acknowledging these delusions exist in our mind stream. This is just being aware of these negative imprints on our mind can help defeat them. We can see that these negative imprints, these negative emotions, attachment, anger, ignorance, are impermanent. They're not our true nature. Like clouds in the sky, they don't stain our Buddha nature. The Buddha himself and Buddha's teachings tell us that we can eradicate these negativities forever. So we see these faults, we reject the faults. We don't reject ourselves, our Buddha nature. We blame the fault. No guilt. The fault does not harm our Buddha nature. So these faults of anger, pride, attachment are dependent on causes and conditions, delusional causes and conditions. There's no firm foundation for these negativities. They lack any independent existence. They can be purified by cultivating antidotes, compassion, and wisdom, loving kindness. We can eradicate the negativities and their imprints on our mind stream. Just being mindful of what's happening, of our delusions, can help destroy that. So the next point is to look at our situation in a positive way, where we are. Looking at our physical situation, our house, our relationships, our pets, our age, everything is just right for us to work with. Every single experience, pleasant, unpleasant, challenging, easy, becomes a cause for us to practice, a cause for happiness. Stay with that feeling content, rejoicing in our situation, particularly our perfect body and having discovered the Dharma. The precious Buddhist teachings. The Dharma and the triple gem, Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. We can, being aware that this opportunity is short-lived, death is certain, time of death is uncertain. This situation can end at any moment. We could lose this precious human body at any moment, so we need to practice now, take advantage of our incredible good fortune. Take refuge in Buddha, Dharma, Sangha. So finally we can just wish ourselves well. May I be happy, may I be healthy, may I live in peace. And having made peace with ourselves, we can extend that to others. May all beings be happy, healthy, and live in peace. Generating that thought, well, wishing all beings well. So finally, we just dedicate any positive imprints on our minds from tonight's practices and study, or the positive imprints from the past practice and future practice, dedicate to our progress along the path to full enlightenment. And just reading Lama Zopa's special dedication for the pandemic. However many sick sentient beings there are, may they quickly be freed from all sickness. May all sickness, without exception, of all transmigrating beings never occur again. May the Buddha Dharma last for a long time, and may sentient beings in the world meet the Buddha Dharma and Sangha, and achieve enlightenment as quickly as possible. Dedicating to that. Okay, so that's it for tonight. Thanks so much for being there. Hope you have a good night and a very good, healthy and dry week, wherever you are. And look forward to seeing you next week, same time. Take care.